the Leader of the House on a point of order.
Mr Speaker.
Well, let's go to the female panel. No introductions needed. Sen Fierravanti-Wells, two very smart women, and Tanya Plibersek. To the budget. To you firstly, Conchetta, what do you think, you've heard both speeches, is the point of difference between these political parties? I mean, is this a budget that will appeal to your government's political base?
Look, Alan, I think that we've seen extraordinary times, and during such extraordinary times, we have spent a lot of money to save lives and livelihoods, but I am very concerned about the growing disquiet, about the mountain of debt and deficit that we are leaving for future generations. And that, I think, is really, for me, the biggest concern.
I think so. I agree with you. Tanya, former deputy leader, potential leader. If the government has spent money, as it has, on addressing the virus, improving aged care, addressing childcare costs, committing itself to putting people into employment, how does the Labor Party appeal to an electorate which still remembers the tax and spend policies of Bill Shorten only a couple of years ago?
Well, the government certainly has spent, and Conchetta's right, they're running up close to $1 trillion worth of debt, an extra $100 billion announced on budget night. And at the heart of this budget, of Josh Frydenberg's budget, is actually a pay cut and a tax hike for millions of working Australians. Like most of Scott Morrison's announcements, you get the big flashy headline on day one, and then you read the terms and conditions, the fine print, and right there in black and white in the budget, it shows pay going backwards and taxes going up for millions of working Australians. So you spend all this money, and what do you get for it?
I don't pull you up there, but I mean, we're a bit nitpicking here, because there's a 1,080 bonus was given to workers to get them over the coronavirus. He has now restored that. And so when the tax cuts then cut in 3 years' time, that 1,080 will go out. It's a bit unfair to say, therefore, that we're cutting people's wages when we withdraw the $1,080.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that the tax benefit for people on low and middle incomes is a temporary one, rolled over year to year, and the benefits that they're proposing for the upper end are permanent and locked in. I just think, Alan, you know, budgets are always about choices. I don't think anybody thinks things are going to be back to normal in a year's time. So people will feel it when they get $1,000 this year, but they don't get it next year. They'll feel it as a tax.
See, I don't know what...
Particularly as their wages are going to flatlining. The budget also shows that wages are actually going backwards while the cost of living continues to go up. Housing prices, health prices, childcare, everybody knows that people are finding it harder and harder to make ends meet. This budget should have helped with that. And I know you're a big fan of infrastructure investment. This budget actually cuts $3.3 billion from infrastructure. How can that be at a time when we should be building, we should be investing for the future?
Well, I've written about this today in terms of migration. If migration is going to be the source of growing the economy, we are in trouble. Can I just ask you, Conchetta, because the Anthony Albanese tonight couldn't help himself talking about net zero carbon dioxide emissions. Do you think people are going to rush to the polls? I can't wait to vote for Labor because they're talking about net zero carbon dioxide emissions. To be fair to Scott Morrison and Angus Taylor, they're saying, well, that might be a good idea, but we're not going to muck up the economy to get there. Conchetta.
Well, Alan, for me, carbon dioxide is plant food, and it's vital for the health of this planet.
It is.
And we all want clean air, we all want clean water, we all want clean food, but we shouldn't be sacrificing our economy on what has now become effectively obsessive zealotry based on questionable modelling. And that's not what Australians want.
See, Tanya, I don't know what your correspondence is telling you, but I can tell you what... I mean, people are not going to rush out to the polls to vote for a parity on net zero carbon dioxide emissions, which will change temperatures, if it's going to change it all, by 0.4 of a degree centigrade by the year 2100.
Well, Alan, you know, you and I don't agree on issues around climate change, but I think we do agree on the fact that Australia needs cheaper energy. And today, renewable energy from solar is the cheapest form of electricity in history. There's a reason that millions of Australians have put solar panels in the...
Tanya, there's only three things. There's only three things in energy policy.
We've got dispatchable energy coming online all the time. I agree we need dispatchable energy. I agree that we need cheaper batteries. We need better
You can say coal,
transition.
Tanya. You won't choke saying coal.
Well, no, it's fine. Coal will be around for a while, Alan, but renewable energy is cheaper all the time, and we are mad to turn our backs on cheaper energy. If we want to be a manufacturing country, if we want businesses to see their energy bills come down, then we need to embrace
How
cheaper,
extraordinary,
cleaner
Tanya, how
energy.
extraordinary that every country in the world wants our coal so that they can give their people, out of poverty,
Sure.
for cheaper electricity. Conchetta, can I come to you? You see, there's only three things. I could write an energy policy in one sentence. It's got to be available, which renewable isn't. It's got to be reliable, which renewable isn't, and it's got to be affordable. How do you get that out of solar and wind? I don't know. Conchetta.
That's right. We need, Australians have relied on dependable, coal-fired, affordable electricity, and for them, the issue in relation to coal equates with higher electricity prices. And here we are damaging our own economy. Meanwhile, China is buying up our coal to help their economy.
Well, not just China.
And our economy is suffering.
Not just China. See,
other economies as well.
Not just China. See, Tanya, Bjorn Lomborg is a world authority on this, and acknowledged as such. Hang on, let me tell you. He said, quote, "The current Paris Agreement will force more people into poverty by 2030 than otherwise would have happened, to reduce warming by 2100 by 0.4 of a degree." Tanya, China are laughing. They're promising net zero emissions by 2060, 10 years after the rest of the world go broke by inflicting irreversible damage on their economies. China will rule supreme. I mean, how does that make sense?
You know what, Alan? Of all those people who've put solar panels on the roof, some care about climate change, some don't. They all want cheaper electricity. There's a reason that the Business Council of Australia, the National Farmers Federation, Qantas, Wesfarmers, all these big companies, including our energy companies, are embracing newer renewables because they are cheaper. And they're
embracing renewables because our governments are so stupid.
With hydrogen, with biofuels.
Tanya, the test will be, don't give them subsidies.
Are we, Alan?
No, Tanya, don't give them subsidies and see whether companies are prepared to invest in renewables. They've been subsidised to the tune of billions of dollars. Conchetta, I don't want to persist, but I want to ask you this. We're told to this of the experts.
It's interesting there's new subsidies in the budget for coal and gas, isn't there? I mean, there's new gas subsidies in this budget.
Just come back to Lomborg has said that making economies carbon neutral by 2050, this is Lomborg, will cost on average 16% of GDP. That's $5 trillion a year for America, $224 billion a year for Australia. How does this make sense? Conchetta.
Well, it doesn't, Alan. And in the end, as I said earlier, we don't want to sacrifice our economy and our ability to progress on the basis of what have been proven to be questionable modelling.
Absolutely. And Scott Morrison rightly said he's not going to... I want to just come to you, Tanya, because I noticed a question you asked in the Parliament today, just shifting direction. I get a lot of correspondence on this. And this is this fellow Gatchins, who is the head of the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, who used to work for the Prime Minister when he was Treasurer. And you asked, when did the Gatchins inquiry into what the Prime Minister's office knew about the reported rape of Brittany Higgins, when did it recommence? And you made the point that the Prime Minister commissioned the inquiry 3 months ago, and you asked, when will it report? Didn't the Prime Minister say that the inquiry into who in the Prime Minister's office spoke to Brittany Higgins, didn't he say that the inquiry had been paused at the direction of the Federal Police Commissioner? But didn't the Federal Police Commissioner say he'd given no such direction? I mean, isn't this a simple matter of the Prime Minister just asking his staff?
I can't believe that the Prime Minister can't walk into his own office with his own staff and say, listen, we need to get to the bottom of who knew what when, and why didn't you tell me? Because I should have known. I cannot believe that the Prime Minister can't ask his staff and get an honest answer. And frankly, if it were my staff, I know that they'd tell me the truth. And if they didn't, they'd be out on their ears.
Well,
I think it's extraordinary.
Yes, I think...
And there's more than one inquiry. They're all dragging on. There's 1 million inquiries now, it seems, and they're all dragging on.
See, Conchetta, this matter's still unresolved. 2 young people, this is what people say to me, I don't understand. They say 2 young people entered the parliament at an ungodly hour. The lady is allegedly so drunk she can't put her shoes back on after going through security. They're relatively unimportant employees in the scheme of things, but they get access to the office of the Defence Minister around 2 a.m. The lady is allegedly raped. No one's been charged. She gets a private audience with the Prime Minister, whose office apparently spoke to this girl in the days surrounding when all of this happened, and no one knows who spoke to her, why and what was said, and why this wasn't passed on to the Prime Minister. Concetta, what are they saying in the party room about this? How's that credible?
Well, Alan, politics is about perception, and I have to say that the perception is how come the Prime Minister didn't know. Now, we know that Linda Reynolds told the Senate on the 23rd of February this year that she didn't speak to Scott Morrison, she didn't speak to Michaelia Cash, but she did take advice from then Special Minister of State Alex Hawke. So perhaps Mr Hawke can assist us or others can assist us, but in the end, politics is about perception, and I think that the sooner that this matter is resolved and the facts are disclosed, the better off we will all be.
I agree. There's one other thing we most probably haven't got time tonight. I just want to raise this with both of you because I think we'll talk about it next week. Concetta made an outstanding speech yesterday in the Parliament on this Biosecurity Act, and I have to say I'm not aware of what you said. I wasn't aware until I read your speech. With sweeping powers, this thing that's banned Australians in India from coming home, and it's got these sweeping powers to ban the citizens. But you said, Concetta, the laws were exempt from disallowance. And it banned these citizens, and we know 5 years imprisonment and so on. But what I found staggering is you telling us that parliamentarians are prevented from scrutinising such an act and disallowing its powers. Now, we just might leave that point there. I'd like to resume next week with both of you about this issue. It seems extraordinary that the Parliament doesn't have the power to scrutinise important legislation. Can I put you both on notice on that one?
Thank you.
Good to talk to you.
Will do.
Thank you so much. There she is, Tanya Plibersek and
night.
Concetta Fierravanti-Wells. Back after the break.
Fuel your thinking on the federal budget. Read the nation's best analysis in The Australian tomorrow.